Formula One has had its fair share of terrible drivers, but what about the guys who set high expectations only to fall flat on their faces? Some of these drivers even got kicked out of F1 midway through the season, but how did their once promising careers crash and burn, and were they really that bad? Nick De Vries's Formula One career has got to be one of the biggest flops in recent history. It all started when he was subbed into the Williams seat for the 2022 Italian Grand Prix, replacing the hospitalized Alex Albon. Nobody really expected much from the Dutchman, but when he finished his debut race in 9th place, bagging 2 points, he became the talk of the town. The guy desperate for a piece of De Vries was Formula One's resident Sith Lord, Dr. Helmut Marko. Marko gave De Vries a fully fledged F1 seat in 2023 with AlphaTauri, alongside Yuki Tsunoda. After his stunning debut, expectations for De Vries were sky high, and when he started giving out interviews like this,
Yuki is a very quick driver, but I am a little bit more experienced, more mature and more complete.
You can't blame us for thinking De Vries would be at bare minimum on par with Tsunoda. But when the season opener at Bahrain rolled around, reality hit us, like Lance Stroll hitting a wall. De Vries qualified almost 8/10 behind Tsunoda and finished the race even further back. But Nick is a Formula 2 and Formula E champion, so surely he'd find his rhythm in the next few races. Well, not exactly. He got dunked on again by Tsunoda in Saudi Arabia, with a spin in qualifying not exactly helping his reputation. And in Australia, after once again being out-qualified, his race was ended by a man who doesn't know what a kilometre is. I mean, at least that one wasn't his fault, but it's fair to say eyebrows were already being raised at this supposed future F1 star. Things only got worse in Baku, where a date with the Turn 5 wall ended his race. And in Miami, his first lap tango on the back of Lando Norris eliminated any chance of a decent result. The only positive thing to come out of that weekend was that he finally out-qualified Yuki. I mean, at least it's something. By the time Monaco rolled around, rumors had already started to circulate that good old Dr. Marko was on the verge of giving Nick the boot, and a simply mid-performance that weekend didn't really help his case. Despite turning into a washing machine more times than I can count in Spain, Nick actually managed to out-qualify Tsunoda for the second time that season, but that was thrown away in the race where Yuki demolished him. The pressure was really starting to mount on Nick, with it being widely speculated that the next few races would determine his F1 career. So, surely he'd pull out a world-class performance. Well, he did exactly the opposite, qualifying dead last in Austria. By this point, I was half expecting Dr. Marko to drag Nick out of the car himself. The next race at Silverstone simply sealed De Vries's fate, as Yuki yet again ran circles around him all weekend. And just a few days later, the announcement was made that De Vries had been sacked, with Marko basically labeling him as simply too slow. If you're after a man who loves freedom, bald eagles, and the 4th of July, then look no further than our next flop, Logan Sergeant. After securing P12 in his debut race, things look promising for Logan, but I'm afraid to say they only got worse, much worse, as he decided to make the 2023 season as painful as possible for any poor soul who decided to support him. In Australia, he ploughed into our boy Nick De Vries.
Gone straight into the back of De Vries.
In Baku, he made his mechanics wish they were never born.
Oh, into the wall goes the Williams of Logan Sergeant. And that will set the order. We have 30 seconds left.
But surely, his first home race at Miami would give him the boost he needed to finally have his lap times recorded by a stopwatch instead of a calendar. No. He finished dead last. I think you can see where this is going. Crash after last place followed, with the only highlight of his season being a single point at the USA Grand Prix. But even that was only because Hamilton and Leclerc were disqualified after the race. It felt like Sargent was single-handedly trying to bankrupt Williams, as he racked up damage costs in excess of $4 million. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I don't think the single point he scored was worth that much money. So, it kind of came as a shock to everybody when Williams re-signed Logan for the 2024 season. To be fair, he did show a little more pace this year, but not without rinsing Williams' wallet. He crashed heavily in Japan.
Problem it has is a bit of a heavy hit.
Narrowly escaped a crash in Hungary.
Remember, this is not... Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
and continued to trail behind his teammate Alex Albon in every showing. I mean, just look at the Australian Grand Prix. Williams literally gave Albon, who damaged his own car, Logan's car for the race. If that doesn't show you how little confidence the team had in him, I don't know what will. But the final nail in the coffin for Sergeant came at Zandvoort. He ran wide out of the bank turn 3 corner, and for reasons known only to God, he kept his throttle pinned. So when he hit the wet grass, his car was sent flying into the barriers. This crash was honestly embarrassing. I mean, come on Logan, it was literally a practice session. That crash alone cost Williams $1.7 million, adding his total damage costs for 2024 up to a staggering $3 million. And he didn't score a single point. So yeah, it wasn't exactly surprising when Sergeant was unceremoniously dropped midway through the season, making his F1 career one of the biggest flops, especially since he was literally given a second year to try and make some improvements. Look, I know putting Sergio Perez on this list is going to be controversial, and in years gone by, he has proven himself as a fast, talented driver, but I'm not talking about that Perez. I'm talking about the 2024 Perez, who's become allergic to making it into Q3 and is best friends with the crash barriers. His season started off strong with 4 podiums in the first 6 races, but since then, his form has been completely dreadful. And look, I get the Red Bull car isn't the dominant machine from 2023, but that doesn't mean it's okay to get out-qualified by Mr. Freedom 4 times in a single season. Let's take a quick look at his races since Miami. He crashed during FP3 at Imola, and then crashed on lap 1 in Monaco, which wasn't completely his fault, but the next crash at Canada certainly was. Following that back-to-back DNF, Perez scored a mere 11 points combined from Austria and Spain, before then finishing 17th at the British Grand Prix. I mean, by this point rumors were already rampant that Perez would be dropped by Red Bull. So, how does Sergio respond? Yeah, that's right, by absolutely eviscerating his car during qualifying at Hungary. After a few more mid-races, Perez finally looked like he was going to have a good result in Baku, but his penultimate lap tango with Carlos Sainz saw him terrorizing the barriers once again.
And there's contact between Perez and Sainz into the wall. Disaster for Ferrari and Red Bull.
You can't even make the argument his form has been improving, because at the most recent race in Singapore, he qualified 13th, while his teammate Max Verstappen was on the front row. I mean, after all of that, the only thing Perez is winning is the World Destructors Championship, as his crashes have cost Red Bull a staggering $4.5 million. As if that wasn't bad enough, Perez's horrendous form has lost Red Bull the lead in the Constructors' Championship, and he certainly hasn't been helping in Verstappen's title defense against Norris. So yeah, Perez's career might not have been a complete flop, but his 2024 season certainly has been.